It began on an unusually calm Tuesday morning in November when a research team aboard the Pacific Explorer, a state-of-the-art marine science vessel operated by the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, picked up an irregular sonar signal approximately 90 miles off the coast of Central California. So if you love your country, hit that subscribe button and show some love. Then, the reading was massive, dense, and completely stationary at a depth of nearly 3,200 feet. Blue Ghost's cameras captured over 400 distinct species interacting around and within the carcass. There were dense mats of white chemosynthetic bacteria coating the bones like living snow. There were swarms of amphipods, tiny shrimp-like crustaceans, moving in synchronized patterns that seemed almost choreographed. There were bone-eating worms scientifically classified as ostacs, sometimes called zombie worms, drilling into the whale's vertebrae with specialized root-like structures that dissolve bone and absorb the nutrients within. And there were creatures that none of the scientists on board the Pacific Explorer could immediately identify. That was the first twist. Among the footage captured by Blue Ghost during its initial descent, marine biologist Dr. James Kowalski noticed something unusual in the upper portion of the whale's rib cage. There appeared to be a structured arrangement of objects, dark, angular, and distinctly non-biological in origin, wedged between the curved bones. He flagged the footage and asked the team to reposition Blue Ghost for a closer look. What the camera revealed when it moved and sent a ripple of stunned silence through the observation room. Nestled inside the whale's rib cage, protected by the massive bones and preserved in the cold, pressurized depths, were artifacts. Human artifacts. There were fragments of rotted timber, corroded metal fittings, and two ceramic objects that appeared to be navigational instruments. Further investigation over the following 48 hours, during which Blue Ghost made 6 additional dives, revealed the startling truth. Beneath and around the whale's skeleton, buried partially in the sediment and partially revealed by the whale's weight displacing the ocean floor material, were the remnants of a shipwreck. The wreck was later identified through consultation with maritime historians as almost certainly belonging to a merchant vessel that disappeared without a trace in the early 1820s somewhere off the California coast. The ship, records suggested, had been carrying supplies and cargo during an era when the California coast was still largely uncharted by European settlers. For nearly 200 years, the ship had rested in the abyss, unknown and undisturbed. When the whale sank onto the site nearly a decade ago, it had landed almost directly on top of the wreck, and the subsequent biological activity around the whale fall had actually preserved certain portions of the ship by sealing them under layers of bacterial mats and compacted sediment. Dr. Marsh described the discovery in her field notes as a collision of 2 entirely separate timelines, one human, one natural, meeting in the deepest darkness at the bottom of the sea with no witnesses for centuries. But the story was not finished. Not even close. On the 4th day of the expedition, during what was intended to be a routine camera sweep of the whale's dorsal side, Blue Ghost transmitted footage that caused Dr. Kowalski to actually push back from his monitor and stand up. From inside the whale's cranial cavity, the enormous hollow interior of the skull where the brain had long since been consumed and decomposed, came a light. Not the light from Blue Ghost's LEDs reflecting off bone. Not a reflection. A genuine, living, pulsing bioluminescent light emanating from deep within the skull itself. The team repositioned Blue Ghost and carefully guided its camera into the opening of the skull. What they found inside was the second and most dramatic twist of the entire expedition, and the discovery that would ultimately make international headlines. The inside of the whale's skull had become a self-contained bioluminescent ecosystem. A colony of extraordinarily rare deep-sea organisms, including species of comb jellies, bioluminescent polychaete worms, and a previously undocumented species of small crustacean emitting a steady blue-green light, had established themselves inside the skull's protected interior. The skull had acted like a natural shelter, maintaining slightly different water temperature and chemical conditions than the surrounding ocean floor due to the ongoing biological activity within the bones. And inside that protected microenvironment, life had not just survived. Life had thrived in a way that produced a continuous, rhythmic light display visible even when Blue Ghost dimmed its own lights entirely. Dr. Marsh later described the site as standing inside a cathedral that was also somehow alive. The pulsing light came in waves, blue then green then blue again, emanating from hundreds of tiny organisms that had built their entire existence inside the hollow bones of an animal that had died before any of them existed. The whale had died. And inside its death, something had found a way to glow. The undocumented crustacean species was later designated by the research team as Ostax luminara, pending formal taxonomic review, and preliminary analysis suggested it represented not just a new species but potentially a new genus of deep-sea organism, one whose bioluminescence operated on a biochemical pathway not previously observed in any documented marine creature. The implications were significant. If this organism's light-producing mechanism was genuinely novel, it could have applications in medical imaging, deep-sea navigation technology, and even cancer research, where bioluminescent markers are used to track tumor growth in laboratory settings. The expedition continued for 11 days in total. During that time, the team catalogued 418 distinct species at the Whale Fall site, of which 23 could not be matched to any existing entry in the global marine species database. They recovered 2 ceramic artifacts from the shipwreck using Blue Ghost's robotic arms and transferred them to a preservation container for surface retrieval. They collected water and sediment samples from 17 different zones around the carcass and preserved biological specimens from 12 of the unidentified species for laboratory analysis back on shore. When the Pacific Explorer finally returned to port in Monterey, the scientific community's response was immediate and overwhelming. Peer review of the team's preliminary findings began within weeks, and within months, 3 separate universities had announced follow-up expeditions to the site. The Maritime Historical Society of California filed a formal application with the federal government to have the shipwreck designated as a protected underwater cultural heritage site, complicating but not halting the scientific work underway. Dr. Marsh gave a widely shared interview in which she said something that became something of a rallying phrase in the marine science community. She said that the ocean does not waste anything. Not a ship. Not a whale. Not a single molecule of bone or wood or flesh. Everything that sinks becomes something else, and that something else becomes something more, and the chain of becoming never stops, not even in the darkest place on Earth where no sunlight has ever reached and no human eye has ever looked. The whale that fell had not just died. It had given birth to an ecosystem, preserved a piece of human history, sheltered life that science had never seen, and produced light in a place of absolute darkness. All without anyone watching. All without any intention. Simply by following the only instruction nature ever gives anything, to fall, and to become. And somewhere, right now, at 3,200 feet beneath the surface of the Pacific Ocean, the blue-green light inside that skull is still pulsing. Slow and steady. Patient as the sea itself. If you love your mom and dad, hit that subscribe button right now. Show them some love by watching content that actually blows your mind, and make sure you never miss a story like this one. Now tell us in the comments below, where in the country are you watching this from right now?